All right, today we're cracking open the playbook on a really fascinating topic, guerrilla warfare. This is a strategy that has, time and time again, let a smaller force take on a much larger one. So let's break down how exactly that works.
So let's start with a big question, one you've probably thought about. It's that classic David versus Goliath story, right? How can a small group with barely any equipment really challenge a huge modern army? I mean, it seems impossible.
Well, a lot of the time, the answer is something called guerrilla warfare, and the name itself gives you a huge clue. It actually comes from Spanish, and it means little war. And that's a perfect description, because this isn't about one massive winner-take-all battle. No, this is a whole different way of thinking about a fight.
The key thing to get is that this is all about playing the long game. The main goal isn't to crush the enemy in some epic showdown. Not at all. It's more like a war of 1,000 paper cuts. The whole point is to just wear them down, to make the fight so expensive, so difficult, and so frustrating that the bigger army eventually just gives up and goes home.
Okay, so that's the big idea. But what does this unconventional playbook actually look like in practice? Let's get into the tactics.
You've probably heard of their #1 move, the hit and run. It sounds simple, but it is incredibly effective. It's really just 3 steps. Step 1, you launch a surprise attack on a weak spot. Step 2, you cause as much chaos as possible. Hit their supplies, create confusion. And then step 3, and this is crucial, you disappear. You just melt away into the landscape before they can even figure out what hit them.
But it's not just about hit and run. Oh no, the playbook is much deeper than that. We're talking about ambushes from hidden spots on roads or bridges. We're talking about clever traps, like pits or tripwires, designed to slow down anyone chasing them. Sabotage is huge too, taking out things like communication centers. And get this, even big cities can become the battlefield, with fighters using everything from rooftops to sewers to their advantage.
So at this point, you're probably wondering, how on earth does a small group like this even survive, let alone cause so much trouble? Well, the secret is in their hidden advantages.
This chart really spells it out perfectly. Look at the difference. A traditional army, they rely on maps. A guerrilla group knows the land like the back of their hand. The big army is slow, weighed down by heavy gear. The small group is fast and light. Soldiers in uniform stick out like a sore thumb, right? Well, guerrillas can just blend in with everybody else. And while a regular army has these big, fixed camps, which are basically giant targets, a guerrilla group is always on the move. What looks like a disadvantage is actually their greatest strength.
You see, their greatest weapon isn't a gun. It's the land itself, the terrain. Think about it. They know every single mountain path, every forest, every swamp. It's their home. This incredible knowledge lets them move around like ghosts, setting traps where no one would ever expect them. The environment literally becomes their shield, their fortress, and their weapon all in one.
But here's where it gets even more interesting. This whole thing isn't just a physical fight. It's a mind game, a psychological battle.
Just try to imagine for a second what it's like to be a soldier fighting against this. The enemy could be anywhere, or nowhere at all. You can't tell who's a civilian and who's a fighter. That constant stress, that constant fear of the unknown, it just grinds you down. As you can see here, over time, morale just plummets. Eventually, the will to even be there just disappears.
And that brings us to what might be the single most important piece of the entire puzzle. There's a very famous quote that sums it up perfectly. The guerrilla fighter must move amongst the people as a fish swims in the sea. Think about that. What happens to a fish without water? It can't survive. In this case, the sea is the local population. That support from the local people is everything. It's their lifeline. They get food and water from them, they get safe houses to hide in, and, maybe most importantly, they get information, intel on what the enemy is doing. It's also where new recruits come from. If you take away that support, the whole thing falls apart. The group is left blind, exposed, and it's pretty much game over.
So after all this, months, sometimes even years of this kind of fighting, how does it actually end? What's the end game? Well, it's usually not as simple as one side winning and the other side losing.
It typically goes one of 3 ways. In some cases, the guerrilla group gets so big and strong that it actually becomes a regular army and wins the whole thing. A more common outcome, though, is a political settlement. The bigger army just gets tired of the fight, realizes the cost is too high, and they sign a peace treaty. But of course, it can go the other way. If the guerrillas lose that vital local support we talked about, the movement just fizzles out and they're defeated. So when you look at the whole picture, guerrilla warfare really shows us that strength in a conflict isn't just about who has the biggest guns or the most soldiers. It's about smart strategy, it's about psychology, and it's about having the people on your side. It leaves us with a really big question to think about. What does it really mean to be strong? And how is it possible for the underdog to come out on top?